am reacting to your wrestling hot takes. I do these videos once a week where I review, critique, and roast your hot takes here on YouTube. So if you want to be part of next week's hot takes video, make sure that you're following me on X. The link is in the description below. However, this week's set of hot takes do come from the YouTube community tab, so I sometimes poll people there. So make sure that you're subscribed to the channel with notifications on so that you can see those posts whenever they do go up, and also because I do upload daily wrestling content for you. Look, we uploaded daily wrestling content all through 2023, and we're gonna keep doing it all through 2024. And if the daily content here isn't enough, if you want even more wrestling content, then go check out my Patreon, patreon.com/SantiZap. You're gonna get the Raw reviews, SmackDown reviews, the NXT reviews, and you're also gonna get the Wrestling is Cool podcast 3 days earlier than everyone else. And it also allows me to do this on a full-time basis. So if you're supporting on Patreon already, thank you. All right, let's start and read some stupid shit. Karrion Kross's story of being this sort of Nostradamus that correctly predicts and heavily influences storylines and other wrestlers in WWE has been low-key one of the best characters going. Even though, yes, he has lost a lot of matches, I feel like this is one of those situations where wins and losses don't really matter. The man warned us of the destruction of the bloodline, caused the heel turns of Drew, Shinsuke, and it looks like now AJ, and much more. His influence in other storylines hasn't been given too much credit. Super excited to see what he does with Authors of Pain in 2024. Look, part of me wants to think that this is just retconning, that they just sort of decided to make this a character trait of his because somebody predicted this on Twitter about like 5 months ago, and they made that really cool connection about the people that Karrion Kross had been having feuds with. So I don't know if maybe the WWE saw that awesome idea on Twitter and said, we're gonna run with that, or maybe that was the plan all along. However, the fact that they've been doing this thing with like the tarot cards where they're like, and tarot cards are like for predicting your future and predicting your palm or whatever the heck, it makes me believe that maybe this was the intention all along, because then why would they make his character vignettes be about fortune telling? So dude, if they've actually been planning this all along, this is absolutely freaking brilliant, because yes, you can absolutely track everything that Karrion Kross has done and how he has influenced the shaping of the WWE today. Whether, again, it's retconning and the WWE is going back and rewriting history to make it so, or if this was the plan all along, either way, it's an absolutely brilliant move. Because if that is the case, then you're kind of right here. Wins and losses don't really matter all that much, but at some point, they're gonna have to. You can't just have Karrion Kross's entire shtick be that he changes other people, but he consistently loses and never gets PLE matches. At some point, we have to make both things balanced. So I'm excited to see where they take this. Hopefully it's actually somewhere and it doesn't end up being a dead end thing. Sami is one of the greatest ever when it comes to in-ring storytelling. Of course, Sami versus Roman or Sami and KO versus the Usos are what jumps to mind first, but his run as NXT's darling around 2014 was magic too. I love the character work that he brings to the table, and I think he should still be celebrated more. I think that Sami Zayn is one of those cases that if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't, right? So if you knew that Sami Zayn is capable of what he's doing today because you watched NXT Black and Gold back in 2014, you're really just sitting here and saying, finally, about time that they're letting this guy be able to do the thing that he's really good at. We've known all along that he's capable of this. However, if you weren't around for his NXT Black and Gold phase and all you know is his history in the main roster, then you would think that this is some sort of reimagining of Sami Zayn, that he's just blossoming into this awesome version of himself, when in reality, he was this good all along. He just never got the opportunity to be this awesome. Yeah, his in-ring storytelling is absolutely top notch, whether it's in serious storylines like he was involved with in the Bloodline, whether he was the comedy of the Bloodline, or whether he was just an all-around joke when he feuded with Johnny Knoxville. It didn't matter. Sami Zayn always put in 350% when it came to his character work and to his in-ring storytelling. He's one of the best in the business at it. Grayson Waller has the potential to be a top guy. When I watch him, I'm completely immersed in anything that he does. He even made me care about Austin Theory. I'm gonna say something that might anger some people, especially Austin Theory fans, but in my opinion, Grayson Waller is the best version of Austin Theory. I feel like Grayson Waller is what WWE wanted Austin Theory to become, but ultimately didn't, because I feel like in terms of character work, Austin Theory hit this ceiling around the same mark as Backlash, or maybe even going into the feud with Cena at WrestleMania. Meanwhile, Grayson Waller is just a better douchebag, ultimately, whether it's his antics on social media, his awesome talk show, his trash talking during matches, his great promos, his in-ring work is very, very good. In my opinion, he's better at being Austin Theory than Austin Theory is. There is such a thing as too many title contenders. It's good to have multiple people gunning for the title, but if there's no intent on pushing their individual stories, they just end up in limbo, especially true with the Universal title at the moment. I think that this is more true now than ever before, especially when the titles very rarely change hands, and when one of those top titles is rarely ever on television, period. So when you have a championship or a set of championships that rarely changes hands, and when you have one of those championships rarely appearing on television, you usually just end up having this buildup of people at the top of the card, and now we're just waiting, okay, who's next? And when that person gets their turn and they lose to Seth and they lose to Roman, what happens to them next? It's happened to Finn Balor, it's kind of happening to Nakamura as well, a little bit to LA Knight, to Jey Uso, because it's tough to recycle and have that person get more cracks and more attempts at that world title, which was the traditional formula that we're used to when there are so many people at the top. Because when there's so many people at the top, it's just, okay, next turn for the next person, as opposed to building a more fleshed out storyline about the hunt for that title. So yeah, with how crowded it is right now, with Randy Orton now joining the main event scene of SmackDown, AJ Styles returning as well, a CM Punk, things are getting a little bit hectic, and it leaves people, say someone like Damian Priest, in limbo. Limbo's a real place in professional wrestling where they're still on television, but there's just like no direction as to where to take them. Omos is highly underrated. He looked really good in the ring against Seth, and his pairing with MVP is perfect. I think that if used right, he could go down as one of the best giants in wrestling history. It's kind of weird that he just sort of disappeared after having such a good match with Seth Rollins at Backlash. I don't know if there's like health problems, if maybe there's just nothing for him to do, or they wanted him to become more seasoned and become even better. But at some point or another, he's going to come back. He's young, he's in his 20s, and he's going to make an impact. And I do think that he was already on his way to being one of the most entertaining, best big men. And when I define big men, I guess I'm having him in the neighborhood of like the Big Shows of the world, the Giant Gonzalez's, people like that. There's not too many people there, but I think that if used properly, he could go down as one of the best big men in WWE history. However, the Big Show is a tough one to overcome with how much the Big Show accomplished in WWE. The reason Cargill should win the Rumble is because not only it's in her hometown, but also winning a Rumble would be perfect to start her career. I gotta disagree here, man. I of course it would be a perfect start to her career. Who wouldn't want to start off their career winning the frickin' Royal Rumble and then main eventing WrestleMania? However, I do fear that somebody like Jade Cargill, who has been unproven on a main stage like WWE, has not put in the blood, sweat, and tears throughout the years going into this Royal Rumble. Somebody like her winning could grow resentment, not just in the locker room, but also with an audience as well. In my opinion, that Women's Royal Rumble should go to somebody that's been grinding and has been working to earn it, not just necessarily the new, brightest, shiniest new toy. And I just think that catapulting her that quickly, making her win her debut, the Royal Rumble, and immediately main eventing WrestleMania, I think that we're just putting way too much baggage on her shoulders too quickly. If Roman was around as consistently as other champions like Rollins or Gunther, then he would have cemented himself easily as the best champion of all time. The storylines and feuds that he's had have been legendary as is, and would have been made even better if he was around more to build for matches because of his amazing promo ability and his in-ring storytelling. Yeah, this is kind of obvious. Of course, he would be more revered as a champion if he was there on a weekly basis and defending as often as Seth Rollins or Gunther. So I don't see this as any sort of hot take here, because I think we would all universally agree with this. I think maybe where people would try and fight you back on as to whether or not he would be the GOAT, but I think it'd be tough to argue with him being the GOAT had he actually been there on a weekly basis and still had this ridiculously 1,000+ day run. Because that's been his biggest complaint from the community as to why he's not the GOAT, and that's because he only had 13 matches in all of 2023. That's just not enough. So if that wasn't a complaint, then I don't know how people could argue against the fact that Roman would easily be the greatest of all time. But hey, we'll never know, because that's just not the reality that we live in. The Invasion storyline was much better than people give it credit for. People like to dunk on it for missing big names from WCW, but they did fine with what they had to work with, and it helped get people over like Booker T and RVD that weren't as popular with mainstream audiences. So I do believe that people dunking on it because it missed big names like the NWO, like Goldberg, like Sting, is a totally fair criticism. I mean, we're talking about the Invasion, something that seemed like fantasy booking when we were deep into the 90s. So when we finally have the opportunity to do a storyline of this magnitude, it is a little bit deflating to not get the guys that you were envisioning throughout that Monday Night Wars era. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Like, it did help establish Booker T, RVD, guys that would end up becoming Hall of Fame worthy talent for the WWE, but the Invasion storyline fell flat, and it is because of that reason, and I think it's a totally justifiable reason. Raw and even SmackDown can work as a 3-hour show if there wasn't so many recaps. They can use that extra time for more backstage segments or to build up storylines and even have one more match to give wrestlers more chances. You know what's funny? I recently spoke to somebody that watched Raw for the very first time ever. Like, literally, this was their first time watching professional wrestling, and they actually appreciated the recaps because it helped them understand what was happening today. So when I heard it from that perspective, I started to see recaps in a bit of a better light in terms of helping capture newer wrestling fans. And as an old guard wrestling fan, somebody that's been around here for 20+ years, I think it's cool to be able to make wrestling as accessible to newbies as possible, and recaps actually does help with that. Still, I fucking hate them and I want them gone. Julius Creed has world champion potential. His ability to do the things that he does is unreal. He shouldn't be able to lift 2 people at a time one night and be a high flyer the next. In 5 to 10 years, if given super character development, he can be a main eventer. I'm going to be honest, I think that's the plan. I feel like Julius Creed may be one of these golden boys that the WWE is going to build up so that when he's ready to be in his prime in his mid-30s, he's going to be a main event player. I can see the writing on the wall that out of the 2 members of the Creed brothers tag team, he is far and away the prototypical look of somebody who could be a main event player. And on top of that, he absolutely has the skills to be able to do so. He needs to work on his character development, absolutely, his promo abilities, and helping the world become endeared to not just like how awesome he is in the ring, but who he is as a character on screen. I absolutely see him being a world champion in the future. AKIRA TOZAWA deserves gold. He has been one of the most entertaining parts of Raw, and he's a beast in the ring. Just look at the Cruiserweight Classic. I'm gonna push back on this a little bit. Now, I do agree that AKIRA TOZAWA is absolutely fantastic. He has been a great addition to the Alpha Academy, and he is absolutely a beast in the ring, and you're right, he was great in the Cruiserweight Classic. However, I want to push back on the notion that we need to give people titles in order to acknowledge that they're great. Like, what are we gonna put on TOZAWA? Like, realistically, like, let's think about every title that's in the world of the WWE today. Can we give any of those titles to TOZAWA right now without diminishing the prestige of that title? No disrespect to TOZAWA, he has a great spot on Monday Night Raw, and he's an incredible entertainer, but we don't need to give him a championship in order for all of us to be enamored by his work and acknowledge how good he is. Even though Jimmy's heel turn literally made no sense, this new version of him has been absolutely hilarious to watch, and I'm excited where it goes. I'm glad you agree that that heel turn was stupid and it made no sense. Do you know how many times I had to fight on that hill? People are like, no, you have to look at the long-term storytelling. You have to look at the clues that were placed. And no, it was fucking stupid. It didn't make any sense. And I'm glad that the world is now realizing that that heel turn at SummerSlam was ridiculous. It made no sense and it was dumb. But you're right. This version of Jimmy Uso is absolutely fantastic. I love the whole audible thing. No yeet. him laying in the ring after the show ends so that he has to be rolled out of the ring. Everything about his presentation, his character has just been so much fun. I love what they've done with him, but yes, that heel turn, stupid. I'm a diehard WWE fan, but the reason why I like AEW so much is because they use moves like pile drivers, tombstones, and other crazy spots that you would never see in the WWE. Look, to each his own. If that's why you like AEW, all power to you. I won't ever try and talk you out of it. However, I will say that there's a reason why the majority of those moves aren't done in the WWE, because even though if those moves are done by professionals, the likelihood of getting injured is like super close to zero. It's not zero. Those moves have hurt people. Those moves have ended careers and shortened careers. So I'm with the WWE not doing those moves, although I'm also with you. I like seeing those moves. However, I've also seen those moves hurt people time after time after time. So I encourage you to maybe expand the reason why you like AEW. Maybe, you know, like the wrestlers that they have, the storytelling, as opposed to just like the wild shit, because it's going to eventually get to the point where you're going to become desensitized to that and you're going to ask for them to do even crazier, more dangerous things, and that's when people can get really hurt. I want to sound like a little snowflake. I'm just saying. Enzo Amore playing quarterback for the Carolina Panthers could beat the current Los Angeles Chargers. Only picked this because a lot of people try to roast me for being a Chargers fan. Do you think I don't know that we're pathetic losers? Do you think I don't know that? I'm very much cognizant of that fact, but I'm still here, baby. I'm still a fan of the Chargers. I will never waver, no matter how much you make fun of me for it. So that when inevitably Justin Herbert is crowned as the greatest quarterback of all time and we win the Super Bowl, I'm gonna laugh and drink your tears. World champions should not be expected to defend every premium live event, and Roman Reigns has helped to put that notion into question. While I do agree his absence has gotten very ridiculous lately, him being gone for a bit has made the matches throughout his title reign feel significantly more special, and most of them have had that big fight feel. Audiences seem to like that. Yes, Santi, I'm willing to die on this hill. Look, like, you're not inherently wrong with the concept of, well, if Roman doesn't appear very often, when he does appear, he's gonna feel special. Duh, that's obvious. But the reason that I want to see the champion there on a regular basis is because he or she is supposed to be the face of the company. Also, when they aren't there, the division that they're the head of feels less special because they have less to do and less to vie for. This also creates a slippery slope. Okay, like, what if we are okay with Roman Reigns or any champion not defending every PLE? What do we do then? Is it every 2 PLEs, every 3 PLEs? Because with Roman Reigns, we don't know what that is. This hill keeps getting slippery and slipperier and slipperier to the point where this man is going literally 3 to 4 months without defending his damn championship, and that's ridiculous. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens have the potential to have an Orton-Cena-like rivalry when it's all said and done. A world title feud could really help solidify this. Look, I'm gonna be honest, I feel like the train has already just completely sailed on this because they already did this in NXT Black and Gold, and something that WWE has proven to me over the last couple years is that they're really bad at replicating something magical from NXT Black and Gold into the main roster. Yeah, they did have a pretty decent feud on the main roster, but it was nowhere near as good as their feud in NXT. And I just don't think that they can ever recapture that magic, especially not to the point of creating some Cena-Orton-like rivalry. On top of that, a harsh reality is that neither of these guys will ever be considered the top guy in the company, and Cena and Orton were. They were the de facto 1-2. Roman holding the titles past WrestleMania isn't a terrible idea. Dream matches such as the Bloodline Fatal 4-Way, Roman versus Rock, Seth versus Roman again, and Roman versus Punk are all programs that are big enough to allow WWE to postpone Cody finishing his story. Also, yes, but I'm gonna push back on this because you listed like 4 feuds. Will Roman Reigns be around enough to even have all of these feuds in a calendar year? That's my concern with him holding beyond WrestleMania. Do I want him to hold beyond WrestleMania? Yeah, kind of. I think it'd be cool if he broke Hulk Hogan's record, but you know, you're painting a really beautiful picture of what could be. But the fact of the matter is that the evidence that we have will tell us otherwise, that Roman just will not make enough time to have all of these awesome feuds that you've listed here. All Madison Square Garden shows should be streamed, at least on YouTube. Dude, I don't understand why that Madison Square Garden show on the 26th that had CM Punk's return to a WWE ring wasn't streamed somewhere. I know there were cameras there, so it's very possible that maybe this gets released later on as some sort of special on Peacock, the WWE Network, whatever it might be. But it was a bummer to only be able to experience this through like grainy footage from people there and live in attendance. Like, obviously the whole world wanted to see that. Why only keep it to the house show? Undisputed Era is the best WWE faction of all time. The only thing keeping them out of this list is the lack of exposure to the main roster. They had a great mouthpiece slash mic worker in Adam Cole and two great tag team specialists and the most underrated NXT wrestler in Roderick Strong. They were the complete package that dominated NXT and were constantly putting match of the year contenders. I mean, to me, they're one of my favorite factions of all time, but they don't have to be the greatest WWE faction of all time. Like, we can put them in the conversation of greatest faction of all time because I do think that they are in that conversation. Just because they don't have that main roster exposure doesn't mean that we shouldn't consider them. I mean, look at Bullet Club. They've never had any sort of WWE exposure either, and they're always in that conversation as well. I think it's a nice, beautiful thing that the story of the amazingness that was Undisputed Era is encapsulated into just black and gold, because I feel like the main roster would have fucked it up anyway. Cargill, Garza, and Santos have the potential to become one of, if not the best Hispanic wrestling faction. I could see Santos becoming a better version of Cien Almas and propelling his game another notch than he has already. On top of that, Cargill and Garza have the potential to win the titles and become a mainstay in the top tag team picture. Yeah, I mean, the talent is absolutely there, at the very least from an in-ring perspective. I think all three of these guys do leave something to be desired when it comes to their character work and their promo abilities, but Santos has gotten much better, and both Cargill and Garza have also significantly improved with their time in NXT. So the pieces are there. Now it's just time for these three guys to show up, show out, have amazing matches, tell great stories, and hopefully the WWE books them like a strong faction. However, historically under Triple H, these new factions struggle at first and then they get pushed. It happened with Damage Control, it happened with Judgment Day, it happened with Bobby Lashley's faction, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to happen with these guys as well. I honestly think, in my opinion, they should make a mixed gender tag title so that teams like Karrion Kross and Scarlett, Mommy and Dom, etc. can actually go in ring together and have great matches. I don't want this. I don't want more titles. They are already struggling with a couple of the titles that they have in the main roster. Let's just not convolute things with even more titles. However, I will say I would love to see a yearly mixed tag challenge. That mixed tag challenge is one of my favorite WWE single tournaments that they've done. I think it's so cool. Would love to see it come back and maybe even become a yearly thing. Looking back now, NXT benefited from a much needed refresh in 2.0. As much as we love the black and gold NXT, the vision and the vibe just doesn't match with the main roster, and the change to 2.0 to the present day NXT makes for much smoother and rather successful call-ups. Yeah, I agree. It was a tough pill to swallow to lose NXT black and gold, but you're right. Like, they were just so different. The way that Vince McMahon was running the main roster and the way that Triple H was running NXT, just there was no cohesion in any way, shape, or form, and that's why almost everybody that got called up from NXT Black and Gold, unless you were like the creme de la creme, you know, the top 1%, like the Seth Rollinses of the world, the Kevin Owenses, most of them floundered. And there's people that there's no reason why they should have floundered. Tell me why Karrion Kross struggled so much at the beginning. He shouldn't have. Tell me why Keith Lee was treated the way that he has. I don't understand it. And most of the reason is because NXT Black and Gold did it one way, main roster did it a completely different way. But nowadays, the current NXT really is a proper farm system to the main roster that we have today. So it makes for much easier transitions. And on top of that, usually these people that get called up in some way, shape, or form get lightly introduced by having one-off matches here or there on the main roster, like how Dragon Lee did. Not everything needs to culminate at WrestleMania. Sure, it makes one night of the year amazing, but it risks a lot regarding the timing of booking with injuries, aging, and storylines growing stale / awkward. Plus, it makes the rest of the year, specifically post SummerSlam, very predictable because there just won't be anything notable happening until the Royal Rumble. For example, like how Crown Jewel was very predictable, especially LA Knight versus Reigns. I'm with you. I'm a believer that you should pull the trigger when you should pull the trigger and not necessarily just wait for the best opportunity to pull the trigger. I feel like if it's there, the writing on the wall says we should do this, just do it, because like like you said, you never know when injuries might happen. They were saving, obviously, Charlotte versus Bianca Belair to WrestleMania. Charlotte gets injured, and now Bianca Belair is left into this limbo. So these things do happen. So again, rather than just waiting for WrestleMania, just do it when it makes sense. I feel like Chelsea Green could be a world champion one day. She is good on the mic, her character work is great, and she is good in the ring. I do think that she's missing this like aura in the ring that some of the main event players like the Rhea Ripleys of the world, Charlotte's, Bianca's, etc. have. However, her character work and her mic work is so good that it, to me, it completely masks that, and she can absolutely be a world champion. On top of that, I'm gonna do you one better. I think she should win the Money in the Bank briefcase, and she should use that as the equalizer to beat some of these top women that realistically, if you were to put her in the ring against, we would all believe that Chelsea Green would lose. WWE live shows are better than seeing Raw and SmackDown in person. No big breaks, no real-time element, and the wrestlers can really show appreciation for the fans. Still very good matches, and normally a decent promo cut by the biggest babyface at the end of the show. Dude, I agree. I really hate going to Raws and SmackDowns because you're right. You're kind of half the time just sort of waiting there for things to come back from commercial break. So when you're in the audience for Raw, SmackDown, you're really a prop, because you're not even the main audience that they're targeting the people at home. Meanwhile, if you're in the audience for a house show, they're there to entertain you, not the people watching from home, because there's no one watching from home. So if you want the best experience to see wrestling live, it is to go to a house show. It's not going to a Raw or SmackDown. All right, folks, that's the last video of the year. If you made it all the way to the end, I want to thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you for helping this channel grow the way that it has so quickly. I know that we're going to do even bigger and cooler things in 2024. So I want to thank you personally for watching to the end of this video, and also just for being a part of this journey. Also, shout out to the editor. There you go. A little bit of appreciation. All right, I'm done. Get out of here.